at a convention, I tend to do that. And I know you guys didn't really expect me to stream today, but I wanted to get some thoughts out, and I probably wouldn't remember this come Monday, and I just realized that I have a Colorado bylaws committee meeting on Monday, so I'm probably not going to be able to stream on Monday as well. We have a very long meeting. So I decided I would at least talk to you guys a little bit today. The New Hampshire convention was great. They have elected an all new leadership team that seems extremely competent. Um, Again, things went really smoothly. It's such a great bunch out in New Hampshire. And like I say, every time I come out here, I want to move here. But I say that not, I don't want to say tongue in cheek. I have a life in Colorado. I've got a good job in Colorado. Wayne's career is in Colorado. So there's like no chance we're moving to New Hampshire. But in a way, well, not even in a way, I mean, I'd really love to, but I'm not giving up a job that took me a really long time to find a good job. But you don't wanna know, if you can, it's the hardcore thing to do to move to New Hampshire. Like, they've got the Free State Project has the right idea, and if I weren't at a point in my life where, I'm older and settled where I'm at, I probably would move. I probably would move right away. It's the one really concrete thing you can do to forward liberty actually in our lifetimes. The fact that the LP doesn't support the Free State Project more um, than it does, though this LNC certainly does, past LNCs didn't, I think is pretty much a shame. What's going on out here is phenomenal. It truly is phenomenal, and I'd encourage anyone who maybe is at a point in their life where they could move to look into it. I really wish I could. It's just not a possibility right now. But I wanted to talk a bit because I even have a lot of feelings about it. The talk I gave in New Hampshire this evening, probably just a few hours ago, because I don't think it's what people expected. And I'm not even entirely sure it's what I expected. Coming to New Hampshire is always deeply important to me because of everything that has happened. That, you know, New Hampshire was the flashpoint. It wasn't their fault for a lot of real terrible things that happened to me that actually have turned out for the good, in my opinion. It's made me a stronger person, and it's certainly not New Hampshire's fault what happened. They were victims of a corrupt LNC, and someone had to stand in the breach. So it's definitely not their fault. But I always get a lot. I'm always up in my feels when I end up in New Hampshire. But you guys have heard me talk a lot about my emotional evolution um, after everything that's happened, and I realize that I've like entered the new phase, and I'm not going to call it forgiveness, but I am going to call it not at war, type thing. Those terrible people, and they are terrible people, those terrible people that pulled the corrupt things um, last year. And even though I still have a lot of trauma over it, I realized that I've come to the point where I have a lot of trauma over the situation, but not over the people. Like, I used to think of those people with genuine hatred, and that's not a feeling that I liked. I don't think that's a feeling towards other people that Christians should have. But I did. Like, you can't deny the way you feel. But I came to the realization today, I don't hate them anymore. I don't feel anything towards them except for distrust. They'll never ever be trusted, and I do think they're terrible people. But not hating them anymore is very, very freeing. You don't not hate people for their benefit. You stop hating them for your own because it's like I argued even in that Matt Walsh video where Matt was saying, yeah, but we should be able to execute people who society won't miss. And my argument was, you're not treating people, criminals even, with you're not treating them humanely for their sake. Though it is partly for their sake, you're treating them humanely for your own sake so that you don't become a monster. And, hating people does something to you. You don't stop hating them. It's like when people say, well, you have to forgive, you're not forgiving it for the wrong person. But I'm not at the point of forgiveness. I don't forgive them. And maybe one day I will. But I'm not going to lie. I don't forgive them. I don't forgive them for a second. And as a Christian, I probably do need to get to that point, but I'm not there. But at least I don't hate them anymore. And that was my message in New Hampshire. Because I'm going to tell you something that happened, and I'm not judging them for this because each group has to make their own decisions. And when you start saying things about people or how you should interact with people, there's no 100% rule. Like, for instance, I'm going to go all Godwin on you. I wouldn't say it's bad to hate Hitler. Okay. I'm not comparing anyone to Hitler. I'm just saying there are exceptions to every rule where I don't think it's good to have hatred in your heart to the individuals, but I would make some exceptions for Hitler, but the chances of us running into a Hitler are really, really small. But, nothing in what I'm saying is 100% true. But for most of our lives, it will hold true. So what happened today is a certain rat fuck showed up and didn't register in time. So they got to vote whether or not to make him a delegate, and they voted not to. And in my speech tonight, I had actually urged them to and said, I'm not judging any decisions you make. Your business is your business. But just consider that showing graciousness even to people who don't deserve it or to people you think are bad people is good for you. You're not showing graciousness for their sake. You're showing graciousness for your own sake and for your own soul. And that perhaps that's something to consider in the future. And, and I also said the pragmatic reason. And I think the LNC learned this lesson with me the hard way. I don't know how many of them have actually done some real self reflection, but if they did some self reflection, I think they would have realized that while revenge against me might have been sweet in the moment, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. Where are they now? They're generally not by everybody, but despised by wide swaths of the party. Was it worth it? I don't think any of them would even think it was worth it. They had less than a year. They could have just ignored me for that year. They just could have just froze me out of decisions. But no, they indulged their darker nature and took revenge. And look what it did to them. It destroyed them. So you have to be careful when there are people in your life, even people you might think deserve it. Just step back and ask what it's going to cost you. Because something I've often said, I like to refer to this. I referred to this in my talk tonight. Whenever I give my talks, they're very heavy on my faith because my faith informs nearly everything I do. And I had said there, and I say this a lot. Anyone who's heard me talk has heard me reference this a bit. That there's a Christian hymn that really, and it's called "They'll Know We Are Christians by Our Love." But the line in it that has always affected me, there's a line in it that says, that we guard each man's dignity and we save each man's pride. When you publicly humiliate somebody, when you don't allow them to save face, you generally will create somebody that will lie in wait for you in the future. And they'll generally wait a long period of time, but they will get even when you publicly humiliate somebody. It might feel good in the moment to do it, but it's an example of sowing the wind and reaping the whirlwind. There's nobody who can deny that the past LNC reaped the whirlwind, not just with me, but what they pulled with New Hampshire. And JJ, you came up in my talk tonight. So I wonder if your ears were burning because I said to them, but for everything that happened surrounding New Hampshire, the Reno reset wouldn't have happened. I'm absolutely convinced of it. There might have been a big shift in the LNC, but it wouldn't have been like it was. And not just that, we wouldn't have been able to keep things together. And here's why. And I told them this. I said, we've had a lot of other state parties go through turmoil. New Hampshire was the first. And if we didn't keep New Hampshire, if New Hampshire fell, the rest of these states, like there would have been no chance. Delaware, Massachusetts, Idaho, Virginia. I'm, I'm probably forgetting some. But what I had said to them is that we have a fantastic parliamentarian that's helping these state parties. And you want to know, and I mentioned your name, and I said, you want to know how he got involved? Because of what the LNC did to me. I remember when you pretty much, you watched Cultivar O&R, but we didn't know each other that well. And you wrote me and you volunteered your services, and that's how you got pulled in. But for New Hampshire and the LNC's actions to me, that never would have happened. And where would Virginia have been? Where would these state parties that you're helping have been? It's this unbroken chain of events. It's like the butterfly effect. That one corrupt move by Joe Bishop Henchman has set all of these events into motion and directly led to the Reno reset because there was so much anger over what they did. So my message to people was just be careful when you're faced with a choice with how to deal with somebody. And I'm not saying any of these people are good people. I'm not saying Mr. Sarwark is a good person. But I am saying the momentary pleasure of doing a little humiliation in public might turn out not to be worth it. So perhaps not do it, not for his sake, but for your own and for your own soul. However, I'm not saying never. I can't judge people's situation, but I am saying consider the cost because Ken Molman, when all of that was going on with me, Ken Molman went to Richard Longstreth and said, you know she's just going to get reelected, don't you? And Richard Longstreth said, I don't care. I bet you he cares now. So I do think there's a lesson to be learned there. And also in Libertopia, we're not going to, well, even in the Libertarian Party, we're a political party, we're not a church. You're not going to like everybody. And that's okay. If you see them in your private life, you see them at a restaurant, you see them on the street, you don't have to talk to them. You don't even have to wave to them. You can look right through them as if they're dead to you. But when you run into them at party functions or if they're on committees with you or whatever, We have to be able to work together with people we don't like. Because you think in the ideal libertarian society that there's not going to be people we don't like. And I know we value freedom of association, but I think we've almost turned freedom of association into an idol. And that feeds into what I said, where just because you have a right to do something doesn't make it right to do. And you do have the right to disassociate from people. But sometimes the more noble thing is to find one piece of common ground. And I use the example of our partnership with the People's Party in the rage against the war machine. Um, we don't agree with the People's Party on nearly anything else. We're not going to we're not going to work with them on raising the minimum wage. We're not going to work with them on Medicare for all. And in fact, we should oppose them, obviously. But we do have a point of common agreement. And with even these people you don't like, and that might even be bad people, because there's nothing about being a libertarian that makes you, by necessity, a good person. There just isn't. It's like I said with my pastor. Well, my pastor said, to the congregation, when an asshole becomes a Christian, they just become an asshole with a Bible. It doesn't automatically make them a good person. And there are people who profess faith that haven't had a life change. But it's the same thing in the LP. Just because someone's a libertarian doesn't make them necessarily a good person. But you need to learn to work with people. And I don't think that was the message, people expected to hear from me, a message more of reconciliation. I'm deeply concerned about the fractures in the party. I think the Reno reset was absolutely necessary, and it was a battle that had to be fought. But you want to know what the problem with warriors are? Is that they sometimes don't know how to live in peacetime. And we need to be able to learn to live in peacetime. Because if you stay in constant warrior mode, you got to have a foe. And if we just don't have peace in the party and make the foe our state, who is our real enemy, as Robert Knox said, our enemy, the state, this enterprise isn't going to work. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be able to work with everyone, but what I am saying is you should try to work with nearly everyone. There's going to be some people it's not possible with, and I'm certainly not telling you to open yourself up to further abuse. I can work with those people on the past LNC. In fact, I've had to this term. They've written for things or they've volunteered for committees, and I will work with them. That doesn't mean I let my guard down. It doesn't mean that I'll ever trust them, but I certainly can work with them. And so that's the message that I gave this evening. And I'd be lying if I said even saying that came easy to me. It doesn't come easy. But there are some things that I think certain people have the street cred to be able to say. There's nobody who would be listening to a talk of mine who would deny that I got royally fucked over. And if I, as someone who was so maltreated, can turn around and say, I can work with those people who did that to me. I don't trust them. And with rare exception, I do think they're libertarians. But being a libertarian doesn't make you a good person. So I think I come from a place where I've earned the right to say that. But I'm not judging anyone who's not at that place, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just saying this out of Christian guilt or something. I very much could be wrong. But I prefer to err on the side of grace, and it gets me in trouble. I got like something in my eye. I'm not getting upset. I got like a eyelash or something in my eye. It gets me in trouble all the time. I'm too willing to just put the past in the past. But I don't know. I do think that's the more excellent way. But as you know, I block people on social media because it's not party functions. I don't want anything to do with these people in my personal life. And I would never suggest anyone has to let these kinds of people in their personal life. But they're party members too, and you're going to have to work with them in the party. And if you don't, it's going to end up hurting you, not them. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So even if you do it just for selfish reasons, but some people had a lot of pushback to what I said, and I get it because New Hampshire's been abused. It can be a hard pill to swallow to say, you know, maybe let Nick sit as a delegate. I'm not saying one way or another because this isn't my state. I don't tell other people what to do. Um, Certainly not in another affiliate. Like, I don't know the culture here. This is your state party. I ain't judging anything you do. You've got to live with your decisions each day. But I can tell you in Colorado, there was and there still is a bit of a dispute over this as to whether or not we should add expulsion language in Colorado, and I am absolutely opposed to it. And I'm not opposed to it because everyone in Colorado is wonderful. We've got some terrible people in Colorado, but I don't want them expelled from the party because I know what that's like, and I'm not putting anyone through that. There, there's and if it ever became like absolutely necessary, like somebody murdered somebody or something was like super egregious, the convention can always do that. Giving that power to the board, you're giving a license to harm people. And we've got to learn as a group to neutralize the badness of the bad people and channel whatever points of agreement we have into something productive. Because in society and in Libertopia, there is still going to be bad people. And if the only way that you can deal with bad people is to cancel them, this Liberty Project's not going to survive. It just isn't. Now I'm going to go through comments because I haven't been able to see any of them because my glasses aren't on. So I'm going to pull up chat here. And I'm sorry the sound isn't great. I'm on my little laptop, as you guys can see. Okay. Yeah, Hector Roos, I agree with you that the flashpoint was New Hampshire and everything surrounding what happened in New Hampshire. Now, JBH, Milo, he's left the party. So he's not even somebody who's in my consideration. He left. And let me tell you, if you neutralize the badness of the bad people and you find maybe the one point that they're good with, they will get frustrated at not being able to do their bad things and they'll leave on their own. The lesson that should have been learned with me is don't make a martyr out of people. It will always backfire on you, even if it's a bad person. Don't make a martyr out of anyone. And JBH left. And the truly bad people, if you neutralize their ability to do bad things, they'll leave. They will eventually leave because bad people get off on doing bad things. And thank you, Bill Cox, for the super chat. I didn't see it till now because I'm on my little laptop here. I truly, truly appreciate it. Tyler, the way New Hampshire works is you have to sign up 7 days ahead of time. And then you're an automatic delegate. So it's not tough to be a delegate in New Hampshire. You just got to sign up 7 days ahead of time. And from what I understand, he signed up a couple days ago. So the people who signed up a couple days ago have to, prospective delegates and they have to be voted in. And I see Death disagrees. And listen, I understand people can disagree in good faith. I'm not even entirely comfortable with what I'm saying. It's not easy, but I do think it's the better way. I know, at least for me, it's the better way. It might not be the best way for other people. No judgment here. I can just tell you what I'm aiming for. I can just tell you that dwelling on and hating other people wasn't good for me. And I don't think it's good for anybody. I I think hatred is a poison that ends up not harming the target of your hatred. It ends up harming you. Um, am I at a Holiday Inn Express? No, I think I'm at a Best Western, actually. I don't know, New Hampshire, got it for me. The convention's, like, right there's a restaurant over there. So, yeah, I just wanted to unburden a little bit because, yeah, it was tough for me to say those things, and it's gonna be tough for me to, live those things, but I do think it will be better for me because you can't go on I can't go on hating people, and maybe one day I'll get to a point of forgiveness, but to be honest with you, I don't think I will. Because I did forgive one of them. Those of you who witnessed that at convention, Richard Longstreth walked up to me. He didn't ask for forgiveness, but he asked for a fresh start, which is close enough. And I readily gave it. And within 2 days, he stabbed me in the back again. So he probably ruined it for me to be able to forgive them because when that was tough. That was tough to forgive somebody and have them spit it in your face, and that's why I say he's a terrible person, and anyone in Tennessee should not trust him. That was that was worse than what he did to me originally. Tyler, I actually think he waited because he'd been sick. Um, and he might not have thought, at least that's my impression. He had no voice and he sounded like he got over some sickness. So it could have been that he was sick 7 days ago. And when you're not feeling well, if you're super sick, like you had the flu or something, you're not thinking about registering for a convention. He barely could talk. So that's my guess is that, and he's got small children. He might have had a house full of sick children. If I had to guess, that's probably why he waited to register. And I could tell you another reason why I think he waited to register is he misunderstood their bylaws. Um, he thought because he argued there was a point of order raised. Um, the credentialing committee moves, so there was like 14 people who didn't register in time. So the credentialing committee, with after they list the people who registered in time, they then say, we have 14 prospective delegates. I move to accept these prospective delegates as full delegates. And what Nick believed, I'm not guessing because he made this point of order, though technically he wasn't a delegate, he could, but the chair allowed him to make a point of order. And he misunderstood the bylaws to mean that you either had to vote all of them in or none of them in. So he knew that he wouldn't be the only person who was late. And if it were true, you had to vote all of them in. He's correct. They weren't going to keep the other 13 people out just to keep him out. But that's not how it works. It's just like a credentialing report at the national convention. The credentials committee chair moves to accept the list of delegates, but as we saw last convention, someone could get up and challenge a single delegate or a group of delegates that they're challenging on the same grounds. Like we saw, they tried to remove the entire Pennsylvania delegation. They tried to swap out the Massachusetts delegation. So what happened is someone got up and objected to Nick. So then they voted on the 13 people that had no objection. They were seated, and then they voted separately on Nick, and Nick did not expect that, because no matter how well Nick runs meetings, and he's an excellent chair, but he's an excellent chair not because he knows the rules. He's not that good at parliamentary procedure. People think he is, but he's not. That whole time when that convention got prematurely adjourned, and we didn't deal with electing the judicial committee, because someone moved to adjourn and he disallowed any debate on it. And he goes, oh, and he's like, adjourned is a privileged motion. It's not a privileged motion when it will dissolve the assembly. But Nick doesn't know those like kinds of points. So he's wasn't a good chair because he understands the more complex things. So he didn't understand this, because maybe he would have registered in time. I don't know. But anyway, so that's what happened. Um but he stayed the whole time and he was perfectly civil. Like there was no, other than that credentialing vote, there was no drama or anything like that. This was a very good convention. Nolan, who did not rerun for chair, the new chair is Conrad. Robley Hall, who's the Region 2 representative, is vice chair. Like they got a good group in there. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I wanted to share that with you, particularly since I won't be home until like 11 o'clock tomorrow night. So I will not be streaming tomorrow night. And the Colorado Bylaws Committee goes from 7 to 10. I'm not going to be streaming at 10 o'clock. So you all knew that January up through February 18th was going to be tough for me. So I'm glad I got this stream in. I hope you guys have an awesome, awesome night. And I'll see you probably Tuesday. Bye bye. Love you.